Thank you to Anne for bringing this beautiful spread, Juliana for being our moderator. Right.
Thank you for having me. Anna Schneider. I'm your local global money transfer expert in Sarasota, and we actually have a solution for international property closings, meaning if you have international clients, you would probably want to be more educated about the process of not for them to use the banking system. They of course can do it, but what we offer is better exchange rates, a streamlined service, and hassle-free transfer, global money transfer. We have better exchange rates, we have a better price, and our transfers are much faster and less hassle-free. So the clients funds are 100% insured with us. We offer also personalized guidance and support for clients, so that's absolutely free. They can just call us and ask about what they want to do, and we advise them without any account fees. So, and then we also offer a RESPA approved referral program for real estate professionals like you, if you would utilize our service. We have been around since 1996. We are in 25 countries, we have 25 locations, we are across 4 continents, and we moved about $10 billion last year with a 5-star Trustpilot rating, which is based on 50,000 positive reviews. And clients can actually access the online account 24/7. And what else did I wanted to tell you? And we have about 700 employees at the moment. We're expanding in the US. We are licensed in many states, and we can transfer money across the globe. There is about 5 pain points for foreign national clients, especially realtors or their clients. That's a terrible exchange rate. Banks do not offer any flexibility in rates, so it would be great for them to work with us. There's expensive fees attached to that. Any international transfer has fees attached, and awful execution. Most clients cannot move their money if they're remote. That's another thing. We can actually move their money within 48 hours if they fund their wallet or their account. The banking platforms obviously are very fragmented. Don't agree. There's all different platforms, so there's very little support for the clients, and very much of a lack of knowledge of how to transfer money for property closings internationally. There's the 800 dreaded number that nobody wants to talk to, and of course clients have also worried about fraud or wrong information, which we will cover because we just work with banks, bank to bank. So in any case, we just streamline the entire process for your clients, and obviously they're saving a lot of money on the exchange rate.
That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anne. And Anne has an extreme wealth of information. So, and as well our sponsors. So she has a table in the back. If you have any questions and would like to speak with her later, I think she has a little bit of information on some pamphlets if you want to take it with you. But yeah, with that, thank you, Anne, and we will go ahead and get started. I just wanted to do some Zoom housekeeping for those of you in the room. Thank you for coming today. We also have some attendees on Zoom. So just to let you all know, we do have the chat monitored by Jamie. And so if you have any questions throughout today's, throughout today, then please just type it in the chat and we will address it for each of our panelists. I am Juliana Burns with Berkshire Hathaway and on the Global Business Council Committee. I'd like to thank everyone on GBC committee that helped put this together, all of the speakers and the timing and the event as a whole. So thank you, and also to the Realtor Association, Sarasota Manatee, for helping us and hosting us here today. With our first speaker, Maria Grazia Colombo. She is actually joining us today from Tokyo. So thank you. I can't imagine time change. Maria is hello. Maria is a lawyer who specializes in real estate and assists Italian and international primary retailers in the negotiations for their real estate development in Italy, and also taking care of administrative law matters related to trade licenses and building and planning issues. Maria also handles corporate and commercial law issues related to distribution agreements. She has acquired substantial experience in matters arising from the special sales events and prize competitions. Maria regularly speaks at meetings and conferences on real estate issues in the retail sector. She also does litigation work both in trial court proceedings and before boards of arbitration. So thank you, Maria, for joining us.
Thank you, Juliana. Thank you. So, yeah, you already introduced me. You already said that I'm in Tokyo. I'm really jet lagged because I traveled to Tokyo yesterday, and I'm not. I haven't got used to the time zone yet. I'll try to speak not too loud because it's 4 a.m. in the morning here. As said by Juliana, I'm a real estate lawyer. I've been in the market for more than 25 years now. I've done a lot of commercial real estate, but I also done office real estate and residential real estate. I'm going to share my presentation. Spotlight on Italy. Okay, here we go. And what can I tell you? Of course, there are lots of well, first I'm going to talk about residential real estate. After all this presentation, I'm going to talk about that. If you decide to move to Italy, there are a lot of opportunities, and I think that the panelists after me will tell you more about that. Whatever is your choice on whatever kind of properties you may decide to buy, the legal process is pretty much the same. There will be a lot to talk about this, but today I will focus on a couple of important aspects. First of all, unless you know the owner of the properties you are interested into, you would revert to a real estate agent in Italy. And there are plenty of real estate agents, indeed, in every small town, big towns, of course. And what you need to know is that most of the time, real estate agents are independent parties. They are not the consultant of the seller, they are not the consultant of the purchaser, but they're independent, which means that they earn a commission from both the parties. So be prepared to this, and do not revert to them as you would revert to a consultant, because as said, they are independent. And what triggers the commission? According to the law, the real estate agents earn the right to a commission when a legally binding agreement is entered into by the parties. The commission is going to be 3% plus VAT, which is 22%, from the seller, and the same from the purchaser. This is the practice. This is not the law. I mean, the amount of the commission. If the value of the real estate is over 500,000 euros, normally the amount of the commission is 2% plus VAT from both sides. Now, as said, what triggers the right of the agents to the commission is the fact that the parties enter into a legally binding agreement. What is a legally binding agreement? An offer signed, an offer to purchase signed and therefore accepted by the seller is a legally binding agreement, even if not recorded on the same document, but into separate documents, that is an offer and an acceptance, that would be a legally binding agreement. So real estate agents would push a lot for you to sign an offer. And if the owner accepts it, it may be complicated to pull out of the deal. So if you identify a property you are interested into, try to buy as much time as possible to know, to do your due diligence, to know as much as possible about the property, and also especially to understand whether the property is code compliant. Very, very often properties, especially not recent real estate, so masserie, real estate dating 50 or 60 years ago, most of the times they're not code compliant. So before entering into an illegally binding agreement, make a due diligence, involve an architect, have him check all the papers pertaining to the properties. I would raise another red flag on the process of purchasing a real estate. I said that an offer to purchase accepted in writing is a legally binding agreement. Yes, but that binds the owner with the purchaser. And that means that the purchaser is obliged to pay the consideration, the agreed consideration. Still, you are the owner, but still you do not have the full protection from the law, which you get only if you have your purchase agreement registered into the property registry, which is an official registry kept in every main city and based on a territorial basis. So what you need to do to have your purchase registered in the property registry, you need to have the agreement notarized. So be prepared to spend money on the notary, because according to the practice, the cost of the notary is on the purchaser. This is not the law. I said it, this is the practice, and so it is somehow negotiable, but I would think that this may happen only if you are purchasing a trophy real estate. So this is a brief overview on purchasing a real estate in Italy. This is about the taxes, which is a bit about the taxes, which is a bit boring, so I would skip it. But when you go to the notary will send you an estimate, and this estimate will also include, will also list the taxes that you are going to pay on the purchase. And those taxes you will have to pay to the notary, because the notary is a so-called tax substitute. And then, so you pay the notary, and then the notary takes that money and pays it on your behalf to the tax agency. If you're not ready to purchase, you may lease. You may consider to lease. If you're leasing for residential purposes, you have to know that there is a law which sets forth a series of mandatory rules whose aim is to protect the tenant. So there is a statutory duration of 4 years, which automatically renews of 4 years unless it is terminated with 12 months prior notice. There's also the possibility to get an early break option, but it must be negotiated and written down in the lease. But if you are planning to stay less than your life, I mean 4 years plus 4 years, but you're planning to stay just for a few months, please consider that there is also the possibility to enter into a temporary lease. I don't know if I have some more minutes. I will give you a brief overview on the visa requirements. As an American, if you decide to stay in Italy for less than 90 days, you do not need a visa. You just take your plane, arrive in an Italian airport, and you will be granted with the stay for up to 90 days. And your passport needs to have, a residual validity of at least 3 months. If you are planning to stay more than 90 days, you need a visa. And there's a huge variety of visas in Italy, depending on your situation. Basically, you will have to provide a series of documents. The most important one is the one pertaining to providing evidence that you have sufficient financially resources to live in Italy. We also have a tool which is called Golden Visa, which is expressly for non-EU citizens and whose purpose is to attract investments. Indeed, the procedure is a bit complicated and because you have to invest a lot of money, but apart from that, the mechanism is very complicated and it is seldom used. If you are of Italian descent, you may think of getting an Italian passport. If you are of Italian descent and you can prove that you have an ancestor that has never renounced to his or her Italian citizenship, and that somehow the connection was not interrupted, that means that nobody in your bloodline has ever renounced to Italian citizenship, you may be eligible to get it, because our citizenship system is based on iure sanguinis, that is bloodline. And a few benefits. There's a law which is aimed to attract retired people to locations in southern Italy which have less than 20,000 inhabitants. So if you are, now tax laws are very complicated, but if you stay in Italy for more than 181 days, you will have to pay taxes in Italy. And if you are a retired person who has moved to a town in one of those regions which has less than 20,000 inhabitants, you will pay a flat tax of 7% on your income, whatever income. It may be $100,000 or $3 billion. It's always 7%. Benefits of coming to Italy: you have free or co-paid healthcare, and if you have a permit, you move to Italy and you can have your general doctor. And so I conclude my presentation with some silly things. Italy has always been a crossroads of populations. We are not really populations. We are hundreds of populations. You can see it from our faces, different colors, different shapes, different heights. And so we are a mixture, but we are a bit touchy when it comes to our habits. So when in Rome, I know that this says, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So you're not supposed to have cappuccino after a certain time in the morning. that the board says 12 p.m., but I think it should be 10 a.m. And adding chicken to the pasta is a crime in Italy. Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Maria. And I laughed at the cappuccino comment because I did not know this. And when visiting in May, I asked for a cappuccino because I'm a realtor and
Yeah.
that's what we do is drink coffee all day to survive. And he looked at me, said no, and walked away. And I was like, well, that was weird. So yeah. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask Maria on her presentation or anything related? Yes.
I have a question regarding the commission. So the commission, whatever, it's about 3%. Plus the 22% VAT.
So the
Is that-
question,
Is that 22% on the 3% or on the entire purchase price?
so the question for those of us on Zoom is regarding the commissions. Like here, the commission is negotiable, but what's most common there is 3%. And the question is the 22% VAT on the 3% or how is that calculated?
On the 3%, because we are talking about the bill of the real estate agent.
Anyone else?
Well, is the VAT on the entire purchase?
Is the VAT on the entire purchase or just the 3% commission
Of the commission.
of the commission?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, we have a mic, great.
Also, how long, Anita Lambert, how long does it take for the entire process, let's say, from usually to be processed from writing a contract to then consummating the transaction and getting the property?
Can you say it again, Juliana?
What is the timeline from execution of the contract to closing? What does that look like? As far, you know, how long until?
It may be 1 day or it may be 2 years. It really depends on how much due diligence you carry out on the property, and it also depends on how fast you can wire the money. And I mean, the purchase process per se is not complicated, because you go to a notary. Notaries have standard agreements, so they insert the name, the people, they write the consideration. Well, they need to check whether the real estate is code compliant, but it's a paperwork, and the process per se is not long. It depends on how fast you get to the point of entering into an agreement. I don't know if this answers.
There are some towns in Italy now that they are offering to buy a property for, let's say, €1. Some towns in Sicily and other places. Is there anything that you need to watch for, or is any validity or things that we need to be aware of when pursuing something like that?
I couldn't hear the entire question. I heard about the $1 property. No.
Ci sono alcuni luoghi in Italia dove si possono prendere una proprietà per €1, così dobbiamo prendere qualche misura per vedere se possiamo fare questo e se dobbiamo di alguna maniera essere cauti e alcuni pericoli che ci sono possibilmente per fare qualcosa così.
See, I couldn't hear very well. Well, look, if they're selling properties for €1, is that because nobody wants to live there? So I'm not telling.
I think I'm going to cover some of that for you, Maria. I've got some €1 stuff I'll show.
Okay, so it may be a bargain. It may appear as a big bargain, but most So the times you will have, in my opinion, you will have to put a lot of money in refurbishing the real estate. Normally, these locations are in old villages, on hills, on top of hills, or on top of mountains. They probably do not always have proper electrical connection, plumbing connections. Just forget about the Wi-Fi. They do not even know what the Wi-Fi is. So before, I know it's tempting, but before purchasing anything, just go there and investigate as much as possible. This is not a legal advice, but it is an Italian perspective advice.
I have a question of clarification. You mentioned that when you sign the offer with the agent that it is then binding, is there any allowance for a contingency in regard to the condition of the property, or is it a matter of always doing your due diligence and everything else before signing the offer?
Were you able to hear that?
Not entirely. Can you please repeat, Juliana? Because you are on the speaker and it's
No problem. So the question is, once the contract is signed, you mentioned that you are then legally bound. Is there any kind of contingencies or negotiation done afterwards, or do you have to do all your due diligence beforehand? For example, here, when we sign a contract, sometimes there are, a lot of the times, there are contingencies once inspections are done. You mentioned code compliance, things like that. Or is it just
what? It depends. Yes, I got it now. It really depends on how detailed is the document that the real estate agent asks you to sign. Normally, they use pre-printed forms, which are poorly written from a legal viewpoint. And to my knowledge, they may not necessarily refer to due diligences or contingencies. So my suggestion is, if they are not using an English text, have it translated. And second, add in pen whatever you feel like necessary to add to protect yourself. Because another legal principle in Italian law is that when prints are used, any languages added in pen prevails on the printed form.
any questions on the chat or?
I don't know if the microphone is working through.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Maria? Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Linda Moore, I'd like to know, how do you establish that whether a property is code compliant or not? What's the process?
So how do you establish whether the property is code compliant, and what is the process on that?
Any works done in a real estate must be done in force of a so-called building title, which may be a building permit or other kinds of building titles. And the papers, so to speak, regarding the works which have been done in the property are kept in the municipality, because the municipality is the city hall. I mean, there is a building department, and they are competent to authorize the possibility to do works. So depending on the kind of works, you sometimes just need to inform the municipality that you are doing those. Some other kinds, you need an express permit, but you always have to revert to the municipality. Therefore, the technical due diligence is something that normally an architect does, and they do it by reverting to the municipality archives.
It's very similar to here. I think we have one more question from Anne.
Yes, Anna Schneider. So I have a question. Do you,
issue any energy certificates as well in Italy? I know in New York that's normal, but before you put a listing out and you put energy certificates out, what level from agency or whatever arrangement?
So can you speak maybe on the green certificates, if that's something that you utilize? Sometimes here, when appliances or solar panels or things like that are on the home, we include that in the listing. Is that something that's also done?
Green certificates, you said?
Green. Are you talking about the energy capacity of the property? The energy capacity.
Oh, energy capacity
Of the property.
of the property.
The energy certificate. What I know about energy certificates is that any purchase agreement done before notary needs to be you need to include an attachment pertaining to the HVAC, the heating system of the home. And this is mandatory. If you do not attach it, you risk a fine. And in any case, the notary does not notarize the agreement. If the real estate does not have any heating system, because the real estate has not been completed, or because it's an older home and it doesn't have it, you can skip this process. I don't know if this answers the question indeed, because we do not call it a green certificate.
I misheard her. It's not green certificate. She said
No.
energy certificate.
I think like in what we're trying to get to is like in France, when we had the presentation on France,
Mhm.
the buildings had to be at an A level or a B level, and then once they got below that, then these modifications had to happen to bring them up to.
I think that's, yeah,
really,
along with code
You know,
compliance, yeah.
windows and plumbings, things like that, so.
Mhm.
And it was up to the seller had to.
Seller had to make a correction.
Yeah.
So when there isn't something code compliant, the seller has to make the correction, or can the buyer do that after closing?
The notary does not notarize the agreement if a property is not code compliant. The fact is that you may purchase a property even without going to the notary. As I said before, if you make an offer and the owner accepts it, you are the owner of the house. Okay. Still, your purchase is not protected vis-a-vis the third parties. You will have to go to the notary. It's a bit complicated, I understand. So my suggestion is just skip all the, do not enter into any agreements, but in front of the notary. But the notary would not authorize the agreement if the property is not code compliant. One thing is that the notary would not inspect the property. So you may discover some bad situations after the notarization of the agreement. I mean, the notary just goes to the municipality and checks the papers and checks whether the property is code compliant for the municipality. But the municipality may not know if the current owner built another room, added another room to the property without being permitted. So you may discover this at a later stage when you decide to do works in your home. Mm-hmm. If you decide to do works, so you'll have to file an application or inform the municipality. You will have to produce a plan of the current situation of the property. It's called stato di fatto, I mean, current situation, and stato di progetto, that is the intended refurbishment works. And at that point, you may discover, you may make some nasty discoveries.
Okay, I think we have one last question here.
Mike Cottrell, how is the valuation process down there? Commercial versus residential? Does the bank hire the valuer, or does the buyer hire the valuer to, and how prevalent are comparable properties in Italy compared to the US? We have data everywhere. How does that work in Italy?
So
You mentioned
how-
the bank? Yeah, I think I got it. It's the evaluation process, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're asking this to understand how you get to a certain price. Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Chip and myself had a talk about this some months ago. Indeed, there's not a fair price process when you sell a house. You put it on the market, you put it at the price that you think is good, and that's it. So if you're lucky, you find a purchaser. If you're not, you may have to reconsider your request.
Okay. Any questions on chat? All right. Well, thank you so much, Maria. I appreciate you
Thank
taking the
you.
extra time to answer our questions. I know it's very late for you, so thank you very much on your presentation.
Thank you.
Now
All
go to
right.
sleep.
Sorry. So I'd like to introduce our second speaker, Simon Kahn. He is an overseas property and finance specialist and the person to contact if you need an overseas mortgage. With long established brokering experience, Simon Kahn, the sole proprietor, has become a highly respected commentator for the overseas property and finance sector, regularly featuring in the national media. With his past and current bookings expertise, the overseas property and mortgage industry, and his many connections around the world, he is the go-to person for consumer guidance. Welcome, Simon Kahn.
Hi all, nice to meet you all. I shall go into my presentation. Okay. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Hang on, I'll see my screen anyway. Get the presentation, that'd be good. Right, okay. So, just to give you a quick background to myself, I've been, as they said, I've been in the industry over 40 years. Started right back in 1980. There's been a lot of changes in the market since then, and the market has grown and developed since then. And that just gives you a basic idea of all the different specialists and working with people around the world I've been able to help. So the main countries, which are the busiest countries, which you find most people seem to be wanting to buy at this moment in time, tends to be tier one of the France, Italy, Portugal, Spain, and the USA. And we also have a lot of interest in all these other countries as well, Australia, Canada. We've just reopened Cyprus and Greece. But let's deal with Italy tonight. So what's the current market, the overview of the Italian market? At the moment, there are lower interest rates than the USA. They're coming in round about 4.5, possibly a bit lower, all depending on the loan to value, the purchase price, location, and where you're buying. There's quite a diversity of types of regions where you can purchase in, and there's good rental return in certain areas. What's the negatives? Of course, it's a long flight, and it can be very busy at key times, especially in August, when a lot of Italy actually shuts and it's all very quiet there, and same to December. It's difficult to keep control of your property when you're buying it from a long distance. You have to make sure that you get a good management company to look after the property when you're not around. What's the future potential? Well, it does seem to be picking up in popular areas in Tuscany and Umbria and other diverse locations like Puglia and Sardinia. What we did find when COVID was happening, and when it was at its peak, a lot of people moved out of the cities into rural areas, and that has allowed potential opportunities in some of the urban districts. So what's the current state of the market? Well, the demand is for Italians by Italians decreased dramatically in the last year. That's due to a combination of interest rates and inflation. Interest rates have gone from where they were a couple of years ago, down in the 1%, up to as high as now, as I said before, 4 to 4.5%. There's been a rampant inflation around the world, and Europe has been affected as well as other parts of the world. Financing has been also heavily restricted because of the credit crunch. There's been an economic crisis, and this has had an impact on lending, so there are fewer lenders in the market. The results have led to then, of course, a lower appetite to lend with less products and solutions available. Will this improve in the future? Yes, it will. We're all getting a lot more interest now, and we are seeing signs of potentially more lenders coming back. Since the COVID and the credit crunch in 2023, there's been much more demand from foreign customers. It's not just Americans who are buying there. You've got a lot of English, get a lot of Germans, a lot of Dutch buying into those areas as well. And of course, then you've also got the interest from the Middle East and Far East. Prices have been stabilizing. Interest rates, as I said earlier, are lower than the USA, and this could lead to more interest from US buyers. So what's the problems incurred by buying there? There is a much tougher underwriting in Italy compared to other parts of Europe. If you were buying in France, Portugal, and Spain, they would take into account 35% of your net personal income after tax. And from that, you have to take off all your liabilities, whilst in Italy, it's as low as 30%. There are a lot of compliance obligations. Factor, of course, can add as a factor if you're a US passport holder, and it does take a lot of time and a lot of cost to process cases. They can be very much more pernickety, I have found, than other parts of Europe. The other thing to bear in mind is that if you want to be considered as a resident buyer, in other words, you're not buying and staying living in the States or outside of Italy, then you must be resident in Italy and registered under the Italian tax system to possibly benefit from better products. So what's the current lending criteria for US passport holders and residents purchasing in Italy? Minimum purchase price is 150,000. The reason they have that minimum is that, unfortunately, when times have been bad, we can go all the way back to 2007-8, a lot of people walked away with the last credit crunch, and a lot of the lower priced properties, the banks found it too administratively and costly to try and recover the debt. So they've now set this minimum purchase price. The minimum loan is 90,000 euros, and the maximum, as I said, is 60% loan to value. The mortgage must be finished by age 75, which is quite high for Europe. A lot of the areas in Europe do say to be finished by 70. And I know if you're buying a property in the States, because I do mortgages in the States through my colleagues there isn't an age limit, but in Europe they do have this. One thing to bear in mind is that the terms I'm giving you here are based on retail banks lending in Italy. If you're buying a property that is over 2 million, then we do have banks from outside of Italy, banks in Monaco, Luxembourg, and Switzerland, who may take a different view. And there's no restriction on the level of property, so we can do anything from 2 million up to 30, 40 million. There are some very expensive properties in certain parts of Italy, but those all are dealt, the lending terms and the underwriting is all dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Going back to the Italian banks, this is what they need as proof of ID. So they need at least 3 years proof of income. So they also need proof of your W-2 if you're employed, 1040 if you're self-employed. And the documents to evidence all loan and credit agreements. And that includes last 6 months bank statements for all accounts and documents to evidence all savings and investments. And as I said earlier, the Italian banks can be quite pernickety, so they will want to see everything. If it's shown anywhere in any documentation, they need to see proof of it. The other thing to bear in mind is that they will possibly want their personal credit report to show that your past credit history, wherever you've lived, is good. Other things to bear in mind when you're buying a property, generally in anywhere really, but just running through this for Italy, is always give yourself a calling off period. When you've gone over there and seen the property, don't just necessarily rush into buying it. Give yourself time, speak to your financial advisors, speak to your friends, just get some other views. Check what you're signing and make sure that if it's an English version, that it is a true translation of the original. I can't tell you how many times we've had clients who have signed documentation based on what they've been told, and think, well, I did Italy as a language school, and that would be good, but that's only basic Italian. It probably won't be as complicated as what may be in the documentation. Try and arrange a mortgage in principle. Get a quotation before agreeing to purchase the property. When you do buy a property abroad, you can ask for them to put an opt-out clause in the contract. So if there is a problem with the mortgage, if there is a problem with the legalities of the property, or if there is a problem with the valuation, then you could possibly get a return of your deposit. Try and arrange a mortgage in the currency that you're earning. That's not always possible. But what a lot of people do is they buy the property, they rent it and receive the income in euros, and so they offset that rental income against that property. The one thing to bear in mind about rentals is that in Europe, generally in Italy, Spain, France, Portugal, they don't take that income into account when they do any affordability calculations. Always make sure you take independent legal and tax advice, and also try and arrange your own survey if the bank are not doing it, even if it's a new build. Other points to consider: make sure the property is not illegally built. The lawyer should be able to check for that. Make sure planning permissions and building licenses have been done if you're buying a new property, especially. Is that the true price that you're paying for the property? Always look at comparables. Always try and see also what the developer's done before, as I mentioned later down the bottom there. Make sure you know who they are, what they are, get referrals, check what they've built. Is it full title ownership? Is it all on one deed? It's not on multiple deeds. Are there any constructions issues? These are things the surveyors can check out: how it's built, what materials. When you're buying a new build, where you promise amenities, where you promise restaurants, hotels, golf courses, are they all on there? If they're not on there, what sort of compensation they are? What's the experience? Make sure, the specifications of the property that you're buying. Did you ask for the property to be built as a townhouse? Has it been built as a townhouse, or is it now a maisonette or flat? Again, check what you've asked for and make sure that's been delivered. And also where the property is being built. Is there any restrictions there? We've had properties, and all these mentioned here, we have had clients buy in areas where there's been bird sanctuaries, military zones, floodplains, all these things the lawyer and the surveyors can check out for you, and the banks will check anyway before they lend on it. Okay, so if there's any questions, my website does have a buyer's guide on the website as well, and that gives us just general tips about what you should be asking.
Thank you, Simon. I would like if you touch back on the mortgage completion section. I know you mentioned 75 years old. Is that 75 for the application and purchase, or is that full payment?
That's when the mortgage must be finished by age 75. Yeah, sorry.
And then on new construction, typically the appliances are not included, correct?
Yeah, when they do their evaluation, they normally work on the basis it's based on fixtures and fittings. Well, we're talking about furniture in there, so if it's fitted to the wall, yes, but they won't take into account like washing machines, dishwashers, stuff like that. No.
All right, I'd like to open it up if anyone here or on Zoom. Yes.
So what type of mortgage products do you offer? VA loans, FHA loans, conventional?
Most of the loans that you get in Italy tend to be standard capital and interest. So you have to pay back the original capital and the interest over the period. An amortization mortgage, that's what it's also called. There's no interest-only loans from retail banks. So then there's no interest only. So you have to pay back the capital interest within the period that you've agreed from the outset. When you go to the private banks, when you go on the properties that are 2 million plus, then we do have those banks will look at interest only. But on retail banks, it's all repayment.
What's more common, like a 30-year, 20, 15?
It tends to be 20 to 25 years, subject up to set up to age 75. There are fixed rates. One thing that's quite unique to Italy compared to the other countries, I didn't put that on there actually, I just remembered. In France, Spain and Portugal, if you have a fixed rate product, then you have early redemption penalties. Unusually, comparable, and this is comparable to the USA, there's no early redemption penalties if you have a variable or a fixed rate product. which is quite useful to know. So you could take a fixed rate product out over 20, 25 years, and you can change that within 2 or 3 years if you want to. There's no penalties, which is unusual in Europe, because in France, Spain, and Portugal, the products that we know on the fixed rate all have early redemption penalties.
Yes.
That's when they got independent appraisers when they go to do their loans.
Do you have independent appraisers when you go to?
Yes, we do. We do. We have independent. I can put them in touch with an independent surveyor. If the bank's doing the mortgage, they tend to send out their own surveyor. But what you'll find, which is common in quite a lot of countries, that if the bank's sending out their own surveyor, they're only doing it to make sure that their security is okay for the mortgage. It doesn't necessarily mean they will do a complete full house survey, which may show up more and more areas. So they send an instruction out to the surveyor to survey for their basis, which may not be what you want to check out, and there may be other things. And just going back to that, on new builds, you must also, it's always very important, even if it's brand new, to get a survey done, because you don't know, if you haven't checked out the reputation of the agent or the developer who's building it, what quality. I mean, we've had situations in Spain, for example, where people have bought off new build, not got a survey done, and then start to have, in 40-degree temperatures and clay soil, the building starts to crack. And then when they've done an investigation after the event, they found that the foundations only went down 10 feet when they should have gone down 20 feet. And those sort of things that can come out. So, never, I've been told by people who have said from agents that it's not common practice to get a survey done. Always get a survey done. There is surveyors in all the major European countries that we can put people in touch with to get a survey done, as we can with lawyers. There are experts of all sides that can help them. And when you especially when you're buying in a different country. And so on my website, I've got the buyer's guide, but there's lots of blogs and examples. These are all based on things that have happened over the last 40 years. If you do your homework right and you take your time, you speak to people like Maria, you speak to people like for surveyors, and do your checks and talk to other people, you'll make sure everything's done properly.
Yes.
How common is to apply for a mortgage in Italy, knowing that the country has such an old buildings and so forth, and a lot of properties that pass from generation to generation? Is that like currently apply only for most likely new construction, or is the same principle with mortgage percentage of the old homes to be sold?
I missed the beginning, I'm sorry. Can you speak up a little bit?
Sure. How common is in Italy to apply for a mortgage, because knowing so many properties are already owned and they are passed from generation to generation?
Oh, yeah, you could if the person's selling the property and is relinquishing the deeds, then you can apply for the mortgage. What you can't do is you can't pass the mortgage on to another person. You have to start a whole new mortgage and get it reevaluated. But if the property's up for sale and the deeds are available to be transferred to another buyer, then you can get a mortgage on that property.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, exactly.
So I think you're wanting to know more of like the percentage, like would you say it's 50-50?
Yes.
Or are more people applying for mortgages? Or are you seeing a lot of transfers and?
Exactly.
Well, I would say, well, I don't sell properties, so I can only go by the people who come to us for mortgages. My personal view has always been to get a mortgage, even if you don't need a mortgage as such, because the bank will do a lot of checks to make sure they've got the, everything's right, the title's right, and everything else, because they won't take that security on if there's a problem. And as I mentioned earlier, in Italy, there was no early redemption penalties. So even if you took the mortgage out for 2 or 3 years, and then you found that you wanted to move on, you've at least done all the proper checks, and the lenders have done all the checks for you to make sure it's there. But it's always, you must have an independent lawyer working for you. You must have an independent surveyor, and to make sure they do all the checks on your behalf.
Any other questions? Yes.
Quick on the closing costs and the lender origination, if it's taken care of through the lender or separately, closing costs and
No, the closing costs you have to pay for. You can't add on separately. And the other thing you've got to watch out for in Italy and again in Spain, France, and Portugal, any deposit and closing costs have to come from your own savings and resources. You can't borrow those separately outside, which I know you can in the States and you can in the UK. You can raise funds, and then because what they don't want to see is people raising 100% financing, because their concern is, and this all goes back to 2007-8 when the last crash happened, what they don't want people is to stretch themselves too far. And as I mentioned earlier, Italy has a much tougher underwriting policy in how they underwrite your income in conjunction with your liabilities. So if they perceive that you are also additionally borrowing back in the States additional money, they feel that you're stretching yourself too far, and that if things you get into trouble financially, the likelihood is you'll let that Italian property go rather than jeopardize your properties in your situation in the US. So they want to make sure you're financially sound at the time when your application goes in. Of course, people's circumstances change over the lifetime of a mortgage. People get married, people move on, may change their jobs, but they have to underwrite it the day then when they give you the mortgage. It's based on that, on what your circumstances are at that point.
Example, if you know approximate, what would be percentage there in Italy as far as closing? How much do you need to kind of?
Round about, Marie, about 10% of the purchase price.
Yeah.
We say around about anywhere between, we'd say roughly around about 10%. It's different areas have different values, but if you allow 10%, you can't go too far wrong in land for that.
Great. Anything else? Anything on Zoom? All right. Great. Thank you so much, Simon.
Okay, pleasure.
Next, I'd like to introduce Chip Stites. He is the author of The Laughing Retirement. He is a retired registered investment advisor and certified financial planner who now uses his vast experience in financial planning, portfolio management, and his love of the markets to show people how to be more effective with the money they have saved and how to enjoy the best years of their lives. He retired to Italy in 2017 with his wife, Shauna, and their dog, Frankie, and he is here to share his experience with us.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
And you've been talking a lot about mortgages today, so we're gonna I think change the subject a little bit, and we're gonna talk about life in Italy, because when we first moved to Italy, we made a choice about how and where we wanted to live, and the lifestyle that we wanted to have. See, when I'd been working in the industry for almost 40 years. And I was overweight, high blood pressure, and everything else. And I just decided it was time for a change. I did that in 2010, and I finally sold my business in 2017. So it takes a while to create something new sometimes. So you've already been told, I guess, about me, so we can pretty much skip this. What I wanted to do in retirement was to be able to travel. And I couldn't afford to go back and forth across the pond. And I was worried about the cost of living in the United States. And so we started looking around, and we looked at Portugal, we looked at France, we looked at Spain, we went to Ireland, we actually looked at Costa Rica. And we did most of this through International Living Magazine, which kind of became in a way, a retirement Bible for me. And so we took that information, and over a period of a few years, we decided what we wanted to do was to move to Italy. Why Italy? Well, you all know the reasons. You can see them. Italy, people go to Italy and they say, I loved it. It was absolutely wonderful. It's a 4,000-year-old culture. It's got more UNESCO World Heritage Sites than anywhere else in the world. The people have a history of acceptance. There's a huge respect for age here. They've had universal health care since 1978, and it's a first world country with a second world cost of living. I know that one of the biggest things that I hear about people who have come to Italy is they said, oh, it's so expensive. Well, there's a reason it's so expensive. And that's because you're going to tourist areas. And basically in a tourist area, you can multiply by 3 the cost of living in Italy, because for people in rural areas, the average person lives on about $2,500 to $3,000 a month. The people here are welcoming, they're inclusive, they have a laid-back lifestyle. I can't tell you how many times we've heard, you're not a friend, you're family. We have a little rival with France as opposed to who has the best cooking. And as far as I'm concerned, it's Italy, hands down. Very seldom in Italy are you served anything with more than 4 ingredients. It's how it's cooked. It's how the ingredients are put together. It's over what period of time. And over time, I've discovered that each little part of Italy has its own dishes. Each little part of Italy has different wines. Each little part of Italy has different traditions. And it's something that makes Italy rather special. And one of the questions I get when people go to my website is, well, where should I move? Well, the only way to discover that is for yourself, by coming here. We came for 3 weeks. We went to Venice for 3 or 4 days. And from there on, we never went to a city of larger than around 40,000 people. We went the back roads. We looked around. We enjoyed ourselves. We got lost. We had to ask in broken Italian how to get from one place to another. And we've discovered that Italians are wonderfully helpful, incredibly polite, warm, welcoming people. And after a period of time, we realized that we wanted to move to Italy. And then during our trip, we also realized where we wanted to move. So where do we live? Well, we live in what is called the umbilicus of Italy, the exact center of Italy. It's Rieti, Italy. It's about an hour and a half east-northeast of Rome. We are far enough to be off the tourist track, if you will. We're in a wonderfully agricultural area. Most of the food we eat comes from within 10 kilometers of the house. And that's everything from meat to vegetables to wine to, you can just go on from there. So the food we eat is very, very good. Since I've moved to Italy, I've lost 60 pounds. I don't worry about blood pressure pills anymore. And I can go on and on about the health benefits and what we've done. But we found that for us, we did not want to live in an expat area. And Rieti, when we moved here, had no other Americans that we knew of. So we wound up having to learn the language. Lesson number 1, if you want to move somewhere that is not the United States, where they don't speak English, learn the language. Italy. It's roughly the size of Georgia and Florida. It's 116,000 square miles. But in that 116,000 square miles is about 1/5 of the population of the United States. Now, if you're thinking we're all sitting on top of each other, you're wrong, because Italy also has the same amount of forest as the United States, about 31%. The question I get most often is it safe to live in Italy? And I kind of laugh, because the news we get here in Italy is about this shooting or that shooting or this mass killing or that mass killing or what happened here or what happened there. Italy ranks 9th in crimes per million in the world. That's 9th from the top. The US ranks 1st in crimes per million, with about 5 times more crime than in the US. Italy has a problem with pickpockets and people stealing luggage and that kind of thing in large cities. And so we always, when we go to a large city, I tell my wife, hold your purse, put it in your hand, don't sling it over your shoulder. Because if there's a problem here, that's the kind of problem that Italy has. Italy is a small country in general, and it has a very, very close relationship with the United States. It ranks for a small country high in many, many things. And number two, in healthcare, the United States ranks number 36 or 37. Safety, Italy ranks 31 among the top 100 safest countries in the world. Italy's always seen as a poor country. And if you do a little checking, you'll find that debt as a percentage of GDP in Italy is lower than debt in the United States. Because in the United States, the consumer has so much debt, and in Italy, the consumer has comparatively little debt. According to TravelVV.com, Snap.com, and a number of other places, the food in Italy is the best in the world. Frankly, I tend to agree with them. There's one magazine that was out that said Italy's food is the third freshest in the world, behind Vietnam, Greece, and number 3 was Italy. Solar output is number 7 in the world. United States ranks number 2 in the world. Performance, environmental performance, according to Yale University, Denmark's number 1, Italy's number 23, and the US is number 43. So what does it cost to live in Italy? Because that's what I hear most often. Oh, it's so expensive. Well, it's not so expensive. Right now, we live, and this is a picture taken off of our balcony. We live in a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house on somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 acres for €700 a month, or about $770. Our utilities are the most expensive thing we have. That's about $475 a month on average. Car gas maintenance is about $297 a month. Phones and internet, $93 a month. Healthcare, this is a biggie because until about 60 days ago, my healthcare costs for myself and my wife using the Italian healthcare system was $65.50 a month. That's for the 2 of us. That's with no deductible. That's with no co-pays. That's with no out-of-pockets. They've just changed the rules. I am told in January it's going to cost us $385 a month. But even so, the Italian healthcare system, and unfortunately we've had to use it, has been excellent, both on the private side, which I've used, and the public side, which we've used as well. I realize that one of the most frightening things that people think about when they think about moving to Italy is, how am I going to talk to my doctor? And I remember before my first trip to the doctor, and even today, when I go to the doctor, I write down what I want to say. I write down what the problems are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so that I know I can communicate. And my favorite sentence is, scusi, io sono americano, per favore, parli un po' più lente. And Maria's laughing because what I just said was, excuse me, I'm an American. Please speak slower. Because Italian words have a tendency, they start in vowels and they end in vowels, and they all sound like they're running together. Well, Italians feel exactly the same way about us. Ours start in consonants and end in consonants, and they feel like we're talking so fast that they can't understand a word. So we're all in the same boat. Long and the short of it is that my Social Security and my wife's Social Security basically covers our cost of living here in Italy. It's a fantastic place to live. It is a wonderful, slow lifestyle. And I think the biggest mistake that anybody makes when they go to a foreign country is to think that they're going to take America with them. I've listened to some of your questions tonight about mortgages, and I kind of laughed because we have a tendency to want to put in the offer, and the offer gets taken care of, and it goes to the mortgage company, and we expect to wait about 30 days, and bingo, everything's done. Well, not so much in Italy. It's a little bit different because the dollar doesn't run everything. Time is not money. And how you live and the way you live is more important. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Healthcare system. You can buy private Italian health insurance with pre-existing conditions for between 125 and 350 euro a month. And here again, like a mortgage, at age 75, you're in the public system. That's it. Now, I've heard that there's a company that will go over 75. I haven't found it yet. International expat coverage. When we first moved here, we had to have 6 months of international coverage. And I think it cost us $450 a month with a deductible, with pre-existing conditions. Once you've been here 6 months, you have your permesso di soggiorno, you have your visa, you have a rental contract, and you've lived here 6 months, you can join the public health care system. Anybody can. And I'm told that starting next January, it's going to cost about $2,100 to $2,200 per person per year. But remember, there's no deductible, and there's almost no out-of-pocket at all. When you go in, you're covered. I'll give you a simple example. One of the two of us had respiratory problems. This was 5 months before COVID. We went into the ER. We saw 3 doctors. We had 3 sets of x-rays. We had intravenous fluid with medicines. We came out with a prescription 5 hours later, and the charge was $3.75. I kid you not. So the Italian healthcare system is excellent. It tends on the public side to be slow, but we've had excellent care. There's a tradition here in how you live, and it can be summed up in the words dolce fa niente, which comes from the early Roman or Latin otium, which is basically saying idleness, sweetness of time without purpose. Now, the Romans would tell you that that's not exactly true, because in their idleness, they wanted to read about their family history. They wanted to read about the history of Italy or philosophy or medicine or something that was important to them. And so this tradition of family first, friends and community is normal. It's what happens here every day. As a matter of fact, it's fairly common when you ask where somebody lives to be told, oh, they live in another country. Well, they don't mean un altro paese. They mean another town or village in another area. And that's a holdover from medieval times when another town or another country meant a slightly different language. And it just means that you're not from this area. Communities have sagras all summer long. They have them for art, they have them for music, they have them for food, various kinds of food, pasta. One thing right after another. It's one of the reasons why here there's a tremendous respect for age and for history. It's not uncommon taking a passeggiata or a walk after dinner to see a grandma, grandpa, and their children and their children's children all walking together at the pace of the slowest person in the group. Quirks of life. Well, Italian culture's different. I have made every mistake you can make in the last 7 years. And one of the first mistakes I ever made was we had some friends over to the house. And when they walked in, I handed them a glass of wine. And they looked at me like I was nuts. Italians never eat without food. You serve food first, then you add the wine. So let me tell you a little bit about one story about driving. When we first came here, we didn't speak much Italian. And so our friends would immediately take us to somebody who could speak Italian or speak English. And I was introduced to a gentleman named Gualtiero, who's still a wonderful friend. Gualtiero introduced me to his son, Massimo. And Massimo went to school in Germany, and he spoke excellent English. And I asked him, how do you like your university? He said, it's hard. I'm learning a lot. It's a good school. I said, well, how do you like Germany? He said, oh, it's an absolutely beautiful country. It's as though they clean it, sweep the whole country, vacuum it every night. I said, wow, how do you like Germans? He said, well, not so much. I said, I don't understand. Why? He said, well, everything has to be precise all the time, always the same. I said, I'm not sure I understand. He said, okay, I'll give you an example. They stop at stop signs, even when there's nobody there. That tells you something about Italian driving. Italian driving is signs and lights are kind of suggestions. And one of the hardest things that I have done is to get my Italian driver's license. And it's one of the things I am the proudest of. And I've managed to drive in Italy now for 5 years without tremendous problems and without actually having an accident. So, la bella figura, what is that? That means your character. It means you look good, but your character and who you are as a person, your word is good. The organization in Italy, when we first moved here, we were told that organization is a little bit different here. If something's scheduled for 10 o'clock, it's good if it starts by 10:30 or 11:15, because things don't exactly move on time. And then again, since time isn't money, and since how you live and the way you live is more important, the idea that you're going to get your shopping done or get something done very quickly is not exactly the same, because you'll walk into a store. My favorite, I go to the same butcher all the time, a wonderful guy. And there will be a lady in front of me who will stand there and talk for 5 minutes or 10 minutes after she has gotten her food, because her uncle knows his uncle and they're good friends and they want to share the news of the family. That's normal. There are challenges. Anytime you go somewhere else, language is a challenge. The biggest mistake we made was not knowing enough Italian. It's a wonderful language, not easy to learn, just like English. Not easy to learn for an Italian. Getting our driver's license. I could tell you a story about that would last about a half an hour, but we'll just leave that one alone for now. One of the beauties is that money doesn't drive things. That there is a joy of life here, which is absolutely wonderful. And again, there's that pleasant idleness. So, how to get a hold of me? You can, I have a YouTube channel. I have thelaughingretirement.com, where we talk about all things Italian. We talk about moving to Italy and how to move and how to get your visa, how to get your residence, how to do those things, as well as we have finances. And so my YouTube channel has 2 parts on it, the finances and the move to Italy. You'll notice in the email, in my emails I send out, that if you'd like to chat about something for 20 minutes, I'll be more than happy to. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain them.
Thank you so much.
That was a fabulous PowerPoint. Thank you so much. I also love all the pictures you included. It kind of like encaptures you and brings you in. Your note to timing is interesting. So I know and I'm assuming it's similar to where you are, when you go to the more rural areas, they are not open 9 to 9. They open
No,
at
they
8,
are
they
not.
close at noon, and they go home, take a nap, eat some food, hang out with the family, and they come back at 6 or 7 o'clock and reopen. So
That's absolutely correct. Usually close about 1:30, open up again about 4:30, 5 o'clock.
That's an interesting, I can imagine that was difficult for you to adjust to. Yeah, and there is also, on a side note, because you mentioned so much about age and lifestyle and community and food and the lifespan there. If anyone is interested, there's an amazing documentary called Blue Zones. I think it's on Netflix, but it talks about that exactly, and how anyone in the blue zone is living 100 years or older. And so I would assume many in your community in the rural areas.
The average Italian lives about 5.3 years longer than the average American.
Interesting. Does anyone, and to your point also, I think the main point you're trying to get across is that in the US, we live to work, right?
Yes.
And over there, you work to live. So it's really beautiful. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Chip? Yeah.
This is a boring one, but I was gonna ask about property taxes.
Yep.
And also if pickleball has made it.
So we have a question on property taxes on your home with the example you gave us, and then has pickleball made its appearance yet?
It's not called pickleball. What's it called? Paddleball.
Paddleball.
Paddleball is on television. You can watch international paddleball all day long if you would like. Now, as to taxes on the house, I don't pay them. That is paid by the owner of the house. And Maria, grazie, si sono in errore, per favore. Dimmi. Our taxes, we don't pay taxes. Now, I do pay a head tax here, and the locals call it a dirty tax because we pay for the two of us, and it costs us somewhere in the neighborhood of 180 euro a year a piece, I think is what our local taxes are.
You should pay 2% on the rent. 2%
I
of
might.
registration tax. Yeah, it's in the rent.
It's okay. It's in the rent.
It's shared. 2% shared. Well, the owner is a natural person or a company? Natural person.
The owner's a natural person.
Yeah, so it's 2%
Okay.
to be shared equally by the part.
And we live in Lazio. Somebody just mentioned it. We live in Lazio. To the north and slightly east of us is Umbria. Further north and slightly to the west of us is Tuscany. Abruzzo is to the east of us, and La Marche. And this central Italy, to me, weather-wise and lifestyle-wise, is an absolutely wonderful place. If you go south, it gets cheaper. If you go north, it gets more expensive.
Have you been to Bomarzo?
The town, no.
Oh, you gotta go. It's so cool. It's
How
not far
far
from
away?
me either.
Where is it?
It's not far
Oh,
from me.
no.
It's about an hour
Are you
from
talking
Rome.
about Sacrebosco, Bomarzo?
Bomarzo, yeah. There's
Sacrebosco, see,
Viterbo.
I went last week.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
And it's absolutely wonderful. As a matter of fact, here's the brochure.
Ah, bravo.
And I'm gonna write an article on it for IL next month.
Love it.
Yeah, I think they're more interested in the football, Forza Napoli. Does anyone else have any questions? We had somebody, yes.
Could maybe Maria speak to what's the typical property tax for owners of properties? Is it, what's the rate, depending on how much is?
So I think, so he's asking what the rate is for property taxes for the owner. Is that the 2%?
Maria Grazia, per favore, Maria, correct me again if I'm wrong. As I understand it, when you buy a house, you pay your property taxes one time upfront, that's it. There are no annual property taxes, and it runs around 0.25%, give or take, depending upon the area.
And just for reference, I know you said you moved from the US. What state were you living in?
New Mexico.
Did we have a question on chat? No? We're well covered.
Also, with
All right.
property taxes, it's dealt with differently depending on whether you're a citizen there or not.
Italian taxes are based on residency, not on citizenship. So if you're here more than 183 days a year, you're paying Italian taxes, unless, in my case, I am on an ELR, elective residency visa. All the money that I earn comes from my company. As a US company, it is not taxed, number one. And number two, I have a personal tax exclusion a foreign earned income tax exclusion of $120,000 a year. In Italy, my pension is not taxed. My Social Security is not taxed. And I live on my Social Security.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Chip. I appreciate you. We're doing pretty well on time, actually. So I'd like to now save the best for last. Marissa Keegan is the National Association of Realtors Global Ambassador for Italy, Spain, and Portugal in 2022 and 2023. She's a full-time realtor and licensed real estate broker salesperson at Go Global Realty in the state of Nevada. She specializes in real estate investments, independent foreign finance, and international real estate investments. She is fluent in 4 languages: English,
Wow.
Spanish, Italian, and French. Please help me welcome Marissa.
Hi, everybody. Gosh, the best for last. You're so sweet, but hardly. No, everybody was so wonderful. In fact, Maria, my original PowerPoint presentation was almost the same as yours. So I hope you don't mind. I put a new PowerPoint together, talking about completely different subjects. So I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen right now. Let's share that. Let's play from the start. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So NAR has a global program. I'm sure you're all aware of that because you're at your global business committee meeting, right? Or business council. So I'm going to go deep dive a little bit into it, which honestly, I didn't know a lot of this until I got my current position, which is I am the global ambassador for Italy, Portugal, and Spain. How does one actually get that position? Well, it's not paid. Don't get excited. It's a volunteer position. So I'm going to go into what the program is. So the global mission is for, it's to connect all of our members. We have international realtor members. Those members are all over the world. And what our mission is in global is to connect all of these professionals throughout the world to help our clients, because I don't know if you know, 10% of your database is going to end up buying a property somewhere else outside of the United States. So in the United States, we try to help local and state realtor boards build awareness about international market and the business opportunities for buyers from other countries in our local markets, and vice versa. Outside of the United States, how do we purchase and work in those communities, in those countries? The objectives of the Global Ambassador Program is to promote ethical real estate practices and the realtor network and value through the IRMs, to help NAR's bilateral partners implement best practices utilizing NAR tools, products, and service. Bilateral partner is either an association or an educational entity that NAR agrees and does a memorandum of understanding between them, which is very difficult to do. It takes a long time to find people that have a similar code of ethics. And that's a really big part of who they choose to work with in all of these countries. We try to help our bilateral partners understand the partnerships with NAR and assist them with that partnership, maximize engagement between NAR and those partners by, like, we will go sometimes to their conferences in other countries. They come to ours. In fact, there's a huge delegation coming in from Italy, Portugal, and Spain to NAR Next. So we just try to be a resource for all these things. What is a global ambassador? Well, here on the right, you're going to see of your screen, there's a list of how they divvy it up. It's not one-to-one. As you know, I'm Italy, Portugal, and Spain, so I cover 3 countries. There's 25 of us that are ambassadors, and they have different groupings of countries. So for example, Andorra and France is one person, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay is another, Australia and New Zealand is another, Austria and Germany is another. So there's 25 of us that are all global ambassadors. And we work so we get appointed by the president. So how does one get appointed? Well, just so you know, I knew nobody at NAR. I didn't know the president. I didn't know anybody. I just filled out the form online. And I had done my CIPS designation. I had been serving on various different committees at my local association, as well as a member of the Global Business Committee. I speak several languages. So I went ahead and just applied. And then there's an interview process. And I guess I did well. They wanted me to come back to do more than the initial 30 minutes. And so I came back, and then you have to wait a few months to find out, but I eventually got appointed, and I was really surprised. Everybody I knew in global, locally Las Vegas, told me, don't get your hopes up, honey. You know, it's very political, but really it wasn't. I really feel passionately about the Code of Ethics. I hold several designations myself. I'm a CRS, CIPS, SRS, CRETS certifications. I mean, so I love to learn and I love to educate myself. And I'm the vice chair of the Professional Standards Committee in my local Las Vegas. I served on grievance for 3 years prior to that. So if you care about the Code of Ethics and want to share professionalism everywhere you go, then this might be the role for you. But I would not recommend taking on this role of global ambassador or submitting for it if you intend to do business in that country right away, because it's a complete conflict of interest. So building relationships takes time. So if you're patient and you want to build your relationships with agents in certain areas, then it might be a good avenue, and then transition into that global advisory, like Chip so eloquently spoke about. But you know, there's definitely room for educating people. A lot of expats going to other countries. There's language barriers. So obviously, if you intend to work in any of those countries at a later date, you have to follow their licensure laws if they have them. You can't just practice real estate in another country just because you're a real estate agent here. So there you go. So that's global ambassadors. We work under global coordinators. There are 5 of them. My global coordinator is Hannah Sagalowski, who has been doing it for 5 years. So she just recently got termed out, and we're going to have a new global ambassador coordinator next year. But that's how they break it down. Each region gets this global coordinator. So she communicates with all the people in Western Europe. And then we also communicate with staff at NAR about what we're doing. We also have ambassador associations. Ambassador associations are appointed by NAR, and we work closely with our ambassador association for our country. So for example, for Italy, it's NYSAR, it's the New York State Association of Realtors. For Portugal, it is Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors in New York. And then for Spain, it's LIBOR, which is the Long Island Association. So what we do is we work and strategize together, and each association is different. But Hudson, I'm really lucky because the ones that I work with are amazing, especially Hudson Gateway and Long Island. I mean, the Hudson Gateway has gotten awarded several times for their participation. They just go above and beyond. In fact, they did a global day in New York where they hosted, I think there was about 10 Portuguese agents that came into New York for a global day, and we did property tours, and we went to Fordham University, and we had like an amazing educational experience. And boy, can the Portuguese party. But back to Italy and about the Global Ambassador Program. The ambassador associations, there's many of them covering the 75 countries that we work with. We also immediately, as an ambassador, when you get appointed, you become a member of the Global Alliances Advisory Board, which meets twice a year, which means it's mandatory to attend both the legislative in Washington as well as the NAR Next, which we used to call the conference. And these are the responsibilities of a global ambassador. So I have to attend both of those, the legislative and the conference, yearly. I have to share information I have to maintain communication with I'm not going to read all of this, it's too boring, but I'm putting it on the screen just in case you want to read it. We also meet with either via WhatsApp or via email. I communicate with all of my bilateral partners. In Italy, we have two. We have FIAIP and we have OID. OID is more of an educational institute. In fact, it's officially an REBI council now. So anything that REBI, any of those designations are available in Italian through OID, which is amazing. The FIAIP actually is more, they're more in the CRS camp. So they're starting to roll out CRS in Italy with FIAIP. FIAIP is our longest partner. They've been our partner for over 20 years. Yearly, there would be trade missions from NISAR going to somewhere in Italy. All of this information, by the way, is on nar.realtor. If you search for global, you'll find all of this information in there. The stuff I put in this presentation is actually all from the Global Ambassador Handbook. It's a lot of work. I do quarterly, I do a market update for all of my countries, which sometimes I get information from my bilateral partners. Sometimes they're not so quick to send me information. So Google becomes your friend and you find the right sources and places to get accurate information about the market trends. But I have to put this written report together every quarter and send it to NAR as well as my coordinator. Keeping track of who our IRMs are. You can find people that understand working with American buyers through either the CIPS network or through being an International Realtor member. Not every International Realtor member is a CIPS, and actually there are a lot of people that are CRS that are not even International Realtor members. So let me see, I think I covered everything about the program. I'm going to stop sharing this presentation and close it. But before I go, I wanted to actually share, somebody brought up €1 homes. Are you still in the audience?
Yeah.
I just want to show you, I did another webinar at one point with another organization I'm aligned with called FIAPSI. And FIAPSI is the International Real Estate Federation out of Paris that was created after World War II to kind of help rebuild Europe. So anyway, I did an Invest in Italy series, and this was part of it. Sambuca is one of those towns that had the €1 homes. It's in Sicilia, and let me share my screen. There it is. Can you see what's on the screen there? I'm not gonna, can you see it? Okay.
Yes.
How do I, hold on, play slideshow, play from start. So Sambuca, the mayor of Sambuca is also an architect. Sambuca got some news coverage because Lorraine Bracco bought a few homes there, and I think her whole family bought homes there. I'm going to disagree with Maria a little bit on this. More and more we're seeing expats who are on a bit of a budget, who can't really afford the villas by Lake Como or Firenze. You know, they opt into these places because they represent everything that we've gotten tired of in the United States. So you're talking about, yes, there has been, what has happened in these places, the reason the €1 home programs exist is because villages where, you know, great grandma and nonno, nonni, they were all there, they get inherited. These estates get passed down to their children. But the current generation, most of them, especially if they've been educated, leave. They now are living in Milan, or they somewhere else in the EU, maybe even. So because of that, they no longer really have any interest in the ancestral homes, and they kind of give them up to the local tax authority, which is the comune. Okay, so these comunes started the scheme of the €1 homes to repopulate these dying towns. You know, when your youngsters leave and they don't have children and they're not raising them up in those towns anymore, you see closures of schools, you see, you know, businesses close. And so the €1 homes was a revitalization effort, which has since, it began in the South, but since then it actually has spread all over. I've been to Albuñano, which is a beautiful little place in a hillside, northern mountainous region with beautiful vineyards, overlooking these vineyards on the hillside. It's just gorgeous. They're doing it now. And there's a little place near Cinque Terre, which is about 20 minutes outside of Cinque Terre, which has these €1 homes. These villages, some of them were built in the 900s. I mean, it's crazy, the history, and it's beautiful. So this particular architect did these before and after pictures for Sambuca. Before, after, before, after, before, after.
Wow, nice.
Before, after. And what they try to do is keep some of the charm, you know, so they want some of the rock to show, right? Before, after. The way the €1 home schemes work, you basically, they say it begins at €1. Did I stop the share? Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
It begins at €1. It depends from comune to comune. They have different rules. Some of the comunes will require you to put €5,000 down and commit to renovating the home within a certain period of time, usually 2 or 3 years, because of supply chain issues. The biggest issue in buying a €1 home is finding your trusted contractor. It's knowing how to manage the renovation of your home, especially if you don't live there yet. How are you going to do that, right? So there are challenges in it, but there have been a lot of success stories. Believe you me, I've been looking at this because I have every intention of living and retiring in Europe. I'm a little young now. I'm 53. I'm getting there though. So at the moment, because my husband telecommutes and because I have a team and I can, my son took over the property management portfolio that we had. So, and I did recently move to eXp Realty because I really wanted to be at a company that had a global reach. So I'm, like I said, this is my 3rd year as global ambassador. I do not monetize my position at all, but it has been amazing. I've learned a lot about working and how to buy properties in Italy. I've met amazing agents all over Italy. And so consider me a resource. I basically get emails from members. I am the gateway between 1.6 million members and Italy. So I will get random, and so Italy, Portugal, and Spain. So I'll get random emails or phone calls and asking me questions. You know, I'm looking, my client would like to buy a property in, this happened actually recently, Abruzzo. So one of the things is, and I don't know, perhaps Chip, since you're there, you can tell me if it's different. For the most part, the buyer's agent doesn't really exist. They have things like Property Finder, which is something that's kind of new that I've heard of. But for example, I was looking for a house to buy in Abruzzo, right? And I found this great company in Lanciano called Gabetti. And the lady from there was from Romania originally and moved to Italy, and she was phenomenal. And I looked at all of her listings and none of them worked for us. And then at the end of it, because I'm a real estate agent and I'm a realtor, right? I have loyalty, right? I wanted her to be my agent, right? And then she looked at me and said, "Ma non posso, mi dispiace," right? So she couldn't, because unless
it's hard to realize when you're looking for a house, you have to go from agency to agency to agency because there is no MLS.
There is no MLS, and it's kind of sad with all the headlines.
They work against each other.
Right, with all the headlines that we've had in the United States regarding NAR and these lawsuits, I really wish that I could go give testimony. And in fact, I'm probably going to offer that up on appeal, because I've witnessed what it's like to try to buy property in other countries that do not have an MLS or cooperation. And it's not about a website. It's about cooperation. It's about the idea that if you show a property, someone else's listing, that you're not going to try to steal their client, right? You're gonna go show the property. When I spoke about this at a conference in Venezia, in Italy, about how I do business in the US, and how I said, how many listings can you handle at any given time? I asked them in the audience, right? And they said, well, 4 or 5. I said, really? And you have to go show them, right? You have to go to each of these properties. Every time somebody wants to see it, you have to go open the door. It says, well, imagine a world where you can have as many listings as you want. And I know when I list it in the MLS and I put the cooperation terms in there, that the buyer's agent's going to respect my relationship with my client. They're not going to try to steal my client. They're going to go show the property. And then hopefully if their buyer likes it, they're going to write up an offer. And we already have an agreement of what the payment's going to be, right? It's been negotiated. It's been determined. And their jaws went. And one of the person that is my contact in fee, I've asked this question. It was really funny. He says, yeah, so you go show a property, right, as the buyer's agent, and then the owner says to you, no mi piace. I don't really like the way that Rafael is representing my, I like you better. I'd like you to work with me. And it was a funny question. And I said, well, I would politely say, thank you. I'm with my clients. I'll, thank you very much. I would leave. And then I would pick up the phone and call the listing agent. And I would say, hey, buddy, you got a problem. Because your client just talked to me about representation. Obviously, I'm not doing that because there's a code of ethics, right, guys, that we all abide by, right? So anyway, it was interesting to see the mindset. So currently they're still entrenched in the old system. There's very little trust between the agents. But there is a new crop and a new breed of agent that is emerging, and I've seen it in these educational classes. That's why our education is so important. They take classes like ABR or SRS, or and they modify it to match their market. But there's an understanding that you can cooperate and work with people. It's now starting really more at an agency level. So perhaps a Remax chain or a Coldwell Banker chain or EXP will cooperate with one another and help each other from city to city or from office to office. But I'm hopeful that that our appeal goes a better way on our own particular case here in the United States, because I'd hate to see us devolve. What we have is so amazing. It really is. So anyway, back to Italy. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, well, thank you, Marissa. First, I'd just like to thank you for editing your slides on the fly to ensure we got the most out of today and didn't repeat anything. So thank you. And mentioning loyalty, I just wanted to reiterate, it's normal for them to bounce from agent to agent and work with multiple at the same time. So it's really important for us, obviously, to educate our foreign investors when coming here on our protocol and expectations and how things work here differently. And just so you know, before I forget, I did want to mention we do have a code of ethics class coming in Spanish. Anita, what is the date on that again?
I think it's December 5th or 6th.
Right.
December 5th.
So all of the handouts and the presentation, everything will be in Spanish for those of us that need our code of ethics. So with that, does anyone have any questions for Marissa? Yes.
I just want to say hi, Marissa. Linda Moore. I'm with EXP, and I just was sitting next to you in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago at our convention.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I did meet you. We did have a conversation. I'll be back in touch. It's fun to see you again.
Ask her, are you going to be in Anaheim?
Sure am.
Okay,
Great.
Well, good, we'll see you.
Are you gonna
next-
be there? Great.
Yeah.
I'll put my information in the chat. Oop, I hit send by accident. I'll go ahead and put my information in the chat, my cell phone number. I'll be using WhatsApp a lot because everybody that I work with from abroad uses the WhatsApp. So, or you can just text me. But that's my cell. Feel free. Hi, everybody. That's great. And you too can be a global ambassador. This is my third year. I don't think I'll be doing this more than 4 in total. The way it works is they reappoint you every year. So if you really do a horrible job, they'll fire you and they won't reappoint you. If you do a good job, an adequate job, then you get reappointed, but they usually term you out between 4 and 5 years. So Italy, Portugal, and Spain is going to be available in the near future, guys. So get your CIPS, work locally at your association, and then don't worry if you don't know anybody, just apply. And don't lie, don't say you speak a language you don't, because they quizzed me. And that was one of the things where I was laughing, is like, what, do people actually put down that they speak a language and then they don't? And they went, yes, all the time. And I'm like, oh my God. So thank you, everybody.
Any other questions? Yes. Any other questions?
Can we see her telephone number again? Yeah, ask her if she can type it and then like get her screen.
Okay, so if you can put your phone number on the screen, and then we will also share it to everyone that signed in and signed up today.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah, you touched on NAR conference. It's next week, so make sure you stop by the global table, say hello, and network with everyone in Anaheim, California. I think we're working on getting the phone number, but it will be dispersed to everyone. And just one final thank you to you and all of the panelists that joined us today with all the time change differences in Zoom and this and that to make it happen. We really appreciate all your time. Thank you all.
Chip,
if you're
going to be there in December, so I'll call you. Is your info in here somewhere in the chat?
Who's that?
Oh,
yeah,
you're
actually,
muted.
I can see it in the chat. Yes, it is in there if you scroll to the top, but we'll make sure we can send that out as well for all the panelists. All right, so if you enjoyed today, hopefully you did. If you're not already a member of GBC, I highly suggest you join. We do classes and events like this regularly. We do have our holiday party coming up on November 29th at the Powell Crosley. It's an absolutely beautiful event for networking. I believe the sign up date registration ends the 20th, correct? Okay. So if you're not yet a member and you join, you get a discounted ticket. So we hope to see you there. Yes, you have to register in advance, no walk-ins this year. So we hope that you stay and enjoy a taste of Italy with us, provided by Currencies Direct and Ann Snyder. Thank you again. And I think that's all we had. So right on time. Perfect. Thank you.
Bye. Ciao. Ciao.
Maria, we'll see you in Portugal.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Sorry, I wasn't sure how to change. Perfect. Perfect. This screen. I think you're gonna... Great job.